of Psychiatry Forum. The need for platform has never been greater. This is very much evident that despite a raging pandemic and several issues faced by all, we have been so committed that we have not changed the date or time for the scheduled meeting. And it is a privilege for the state of Tamil Nadu to be able to host this meeting today, thanks to Professor Vikas Menon. And I'd hand over the stage to Dr. Vikas Menon for the opening remarks.
Thank you, Ravi. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Good morning and a warm welcome to everyone who has taken time from their Sunday to join us on this platform. It is my pleasure and privilege to set the ball rolling for the first edition of what promises to be a very interesting series, aptly titled Sunday Special Hour with Psychiatry Teachers. This platform, though conceived and executed in a couple of months, is actually the culmination of, I would say, several years of efforts to think about how to enhance the quality of psychiatry teaching learning activities in the country. And this is one of many initiatives like the Indian Teachers of Psychiatry Initiative, the ITOPS STEP Scholarship Program, the ITOPS Must Enrich Research Grants, all of which have also seen the light of the day. This platform, this unique platform represents yet another attempt to connect psychiatrists who have a passion for teaching, regardless of whether they are or not in academia, with the common goal, of furthering teaching learning skills through peer learning and interaction. And my colleagues and me from Tamil Nadu, a state with a very rich history of excellent and legendary teachers in psychiatry, are absolutely delighted to be given the honor of hosting the first edition of the program. It is said that a good teacher explains, the better teacher demonstrates, and the great teacher inspires. And we all have stories to tell of that one teacher who inspired us, who was our role model, who we secretly even imitated behind closed doors. And for many of us psychiatrists, maybe even inspired us to take up mental health as a career. Innovative teaching learning methods are essential, probably more so in today's generation, to generate and retain learner interest and engagement in any field. And it has also been shown in many films. In fact, the first film that comes to my mind when I talk about innovative teaching learning methods is Dead Poets Society. I'm sure some of you may have actually seen the movie. It's, the actor non-pareil, Robin Williams, enacting probably the finest role of his career, at least to me, that's his finest role, that of John Keating, a laid-back English teacher who uses unorthodox methods to teach English to his high school students and inspires them to make their lives extraordinary. His lessons include having them take turns standing on his desk to demonstrate ways to look at life in a different way, telling them to rip out the introduction of their poetry books, which explains a mathematical formula used for rating poetry, relating what he is teaching to something they already know. For example, reciting poetry to music while kicking a soccer ball, and inviting them to make up their own style of walking in a courtyard, to encourage them to be individuals. The outcomes that we observe are shy students coming out of their shell, expressing themselves, and realize their true potential, which is what we all want to do as teachers. So it's a movie that I highly recommend for teachers who have not watched it yet to broaden our thinking horizons. Why I'm saying this here is because such techniques are of a special significance in psychiatry and mental health, which is clearly not the most sought after specialty for undergraduate medical students of our country, for reasons that we are all very well aware of. Hence, with this background for today's session, we have chosen to focus on how to innovate in psychiatry teaching learning. We are really privileged to have some excellent teachers sharing their experiences with us, and we'll also listen to perspectives of a postgraduate today. I do not intend to stand between you and the speakers any longer. With these words, I'll now conclude and hand over to the moderator. Over to you, Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, sir, for those words of the beginning. When Dr. Vikas had asked us that Tamil Nadu takes the lead for this and has given this task to set up this platform, and we were wondering, what do we discuss for the first session? And there could be just about anything that psychiatry can bring bring in minds to us. It could be about rantings or difficulties, or how to teach students, or how to handle the barrage of online sessions, and just about anything. But then we thought, why not focus on the things that bring the spark the most? Why not discuss the innovative methods that our teachers have used to teach this difficult subject called psychiatry? My name is Dr. Ravi Teja. I work as an assistant professor of psychiatry at CMC Vellore. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers for today's session. Is my screen visible?
Yes, Dr. Ravi. You may want to put it in slideshow.
Thank you, sir. Can we see the slideshow now? So are we able to see the slideshow?
Not yet, Ravi.
No, not yet. Not yet.
Yeah.
It's a slideshow now.
The slide that I'm on is introducing Dr. Deepa. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, yes.
Professor Deepa has done her MBBS, DPM, and ND from the Christian Medical College, Vellore. She's currently a professor of psychiatry in the adult psychiatry unit too. When I asked her yesterday, ma'am, what would you like me to introduce you? And she said something very simple, Ravi. And that's really what defines her. Taking up the most profound concepts of psychiatry and making as simple as possible. And in that description comes this unique concept of using analogies in psychiatry teaching. Over to you, ma'am.
I am left a bit speechless after that. Dr. Menon, that was a very eloquent introduction to the series, and I must say I'm deeply honored to be selected to be the first contributor to this. Basically, over the years, my primary interest is in clinical work. So, Pani, can you put that off? Sorry, is there an echo, Ravi?
Not very bothering, ma'am.
Shall I just try the main screen? Just in case my data sharing goes. Should I try that, or shall we just continue in this?
Ma'am, if you just leave your door open, the echo would minimize, ma'am.
Put that off, Pani, please. Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. Off, Pani. Yeah. So over the years, my primary interest is in clinical work, working with patients. And I just stumbled upon this way of psychoeducating patients. I generally found that after, when you do MBBS and when you're studying, you're struggling to master so many concepts, absorb so many facts, and struggle with the concept of diagnosis and making a plan for management. And then when you get into clinical practice, you realize that is actually one of the easy steps. After some time, in very few 2 to 3 years time, you become fairly skilled at arriving at a diagnosis and deciding what the patient needs. The real clinical challenge is in how to get the patient and the family aboard and cooperate, comply, adhere to treatment. And to do that, we need to complex concepts to them. So these concepts. It can be very challenging. How in a busy clinical setting in a short time can you actually share ideas and concepts with somebody in a way that is easy to understand? by luck, I stumbled upon this way of using analogies. Basically, an analogy is a concept which is expressed in 2 or 3 different settings. And then you can use one to explain the other. So you can already see how trying to put this into words is very difficult. So in clinical practice, we sometimes have to explain to people why after they become well, they need to continue medication. And the principle really is that patients come to us wanting a cure, a permanent cure. And we very well know that we don't have permanent cures in so many conditions, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, you name it. In clinical medicine, we are much better at control, not cure. Now, unless we get this concept across to people, they are not going to understand why they have to say, put up with medication, put up with side effects, and continue in order to stay well. So how to communicate this concept easily? Rather than continuing to talk, I will just show you a video which was made in CMC Vellore and in regular OPD, and where we are trying to communicate the concept of control versus cure. And for those who know Tamil, the video is in Tamil. For those who don't know, there will be subtitles. I'd like you all to watch the video and observe the techniques that are used over there. And maybe we'll have a little bit of time at the end to discuss and to field any questions. Ravi, would you go ahead with the video?
Thank you, ma'am. So just wanted to confirm once again, can you see my screen with the video?
Yes, we can, Ravi.
Thank you, sir. Playing the video.
நீங்க சொல்லுங்க, மாத்திரை எவ்வளவு நாள் சாப்பிடணும்? எவ்வளவு நாள் சாப்பிடணும்னு நான் கேட்டேன். ஏன் அப்படி கேக்குறீங்க? உடம்பு நல்லாயிடுச்சு, அதனால கேக்குறேன் சொல்லி. இது ஒரு நல்ல கேள்விதான். மாத்திரை சாப்பிடணும்னு சொல்லிட்டு உங்க உடம்புல வந்து ஒரு குறை இருக்கிறது, நாங்க வந்து இந்த மாத்திரையை வச்சு ட்ரீட்மெண்ட் பண்றோம். சரிங்களா? இப்போ வந்து நான் ஒரு உதாரணமா உங்களுக்கு சொல்றேன். என்ன பாருங்க, உங்களுக்கு என்ன நோய் தெரியுது? ஒண்ணு தெரியலையா? ஒண்ணு தெரியல. இது என்ன? இது கிளாஸ் போட்டுன்னு இருக்கு. ஏன் கிளாஸ் போட்டுட்டு இருக்கேன்? இது பவர் கம்மியா இருக்கும், அதனால போட்டுன்னு இருக்கேன். கரெக்டா சொல்றீங்க. பவர் கொஞ்சம் இல்ல, நிறையவே கம்மி. இதை எடுத்துட்டேன்னா இந்த எழுத்தெல்லாம் என்னால பார்க்க முடியாது, இப்படி குனிஞ்சு பார்க்க. இது இல்லைன்னு சொன்னா என்னால சாதாரண இடம் கூட நடக்க முடியாது, யாராவது கை பிடிச்சிட்டு போகணும். ஆனா இப்ப நான் இதை கண்ணாடி போட்டுட்டேன்னா எல்லாமே எனக்கு பளிச்சுன்னு தெரியுது. இப்ப சொல்லுங்க, நான் கண்டக்டர்கிட்ட போயிட்டு சொல்லி, டாக்டர் இப்ப எனக்கு எல்லாம் நல்லா தெரியறதே, இது எத்தனை நாள் போட்டு இதை எடுத்துடலாமான்னு கேட்டதுன்னா என்ன சொல்லுவாரு? இது வந்துட்டு உனக்கு நல்லா ஒரு வரைக்கும் போட்டுன்னு இருக்கணும். அது மாதிரி சரி டாக்டர், நான் இப்ப எனக்கு பார்வையெல்லாம் நல்லா இருக்கே, இப்ப எடுத்துடலாமா அப்படின்னு கேட்கலாம். டாக்டர் கேட்டா என்ன சொல்லுவாரு? நல்லா ஆயிடுச்சுன்னா எடுத்துடலாம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாரு. கண்ணாடி போட்டா கண்ணு நல்லா ஆகுமா? நல்லா ஆகும். நல்லா ஆகும். கண்ணாடி போட்டா கண்ணு நல்லா புதுசாயிடுமா? அந்த பவர் வந்துடும். வந்துடுமா? வந்துடும். என்ன சொல்றீங்க நீங்க? பவர் கொடுக்கும். இதெல்லாம் அதுக்குள்ள வெளியில இருக்கிறது ஆபரேஷன் மூலமா இல்ல. இப்ப இந்த கண்ணாடி போடுறதுனால என் கண்ணு புதுசாயிடுறதா? கண்ணாடி போடுறதுனால பார்வை சரியா வரும். ஏன் கேட்டா, என் கண்ணுல இவ்வளவு பவர் தேவை, இவ்வளவுதான் இருக்கு. அது இல்லாத பவர் வந்து இந்த கண்ணாடி வந்து அடைக்கிறது. கண்ணாடி போட்டா பார்வை சரியாகும், கண்ணு சரியாகும், புதுசாகாது. சரியா? ஆமா. முக்காவாசி நோய் அப்படிதான். ஏன்னா உடம்புல நம்ம அந்த பாகத்தை பறிச்சு போட்டு புதுசு போட முடியாது. பிபி, சர்க்கரை, ஆஸ்துமா, கண்ணாடி எல்லாமே பார்த்ததுன்னா உடம்புல எந்த குறை டாக்டரால அடைக்க முடியுமே ஒழிய ரொம்ப கிளியரன்ஸ் பண்ண முடியாது. என் கண்ணுல எப்படி ஒரு குறை இருக்கோ அதே மாதிரி உங்க நரம்புல ஒரு குறை இருக்கு. அந்த நரம்புனுடைய குறை வந்து மாத்திரை அடைக்கிறது. சரி, சரிங்களா? சரி. இப்ப நான் கண்ணாடி எத்தனை நாள் போடணும்? டாக்டர் எவ்வளவு நாள் சொல்றாங்களோ அவ்வளவு நாள் யூஸ் பண்ணணும். இல்ல கண்ணாடி போட்டதுனால கண்ணு புதுசாகாது. அப்ப பார்வைக்கு எத்தனை நாள் கண்ணாடி போட்டுக்கணும்? டாக்டர் எவ்வளவு நாள் சொல்றாங்களோ அவ்வளவு நாளைக்கு போடுங்க. நீங்க என்ன புரிஞ்சுக்கிட்டீங்க? போட்டுட்டே தான் இருக்கணும். போட்டுட்டே தான் இருக்கணும். ஏன்னா என் கண்ணு என்னைக்குமே புதுசா ஆகாது. நான் கண்ணாடி ஐஸ் பூரா போடணும். நீங்க மாத்திரை கண்டினியூவா சரி ஓகேவா? சரி. என் கண்ணாடி போட்டுட்டு எனக்கு பார்வை பர்ஃபெக்ட், மாத்திரை போட்டுட்டு உங்களுக்கு நோய் ஓகே. சரி ஓகே.
I hope everyone was able to follow the video. Ravi, am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody watching now, and join us on the Open Business Consult Summit hosted by City ABC. First of all, I would like to thank you all to join us today for this exciting panel. We have one of the top thought leaders and experts in their respective industry.
Dr. Kiran, can you just mute everybody?
The CEO and of Raven Bank. Unfortunately, we're missing one of the speakers. I hope he's okay. I believe they have some urgent thing he couldn't join us today. But never mind, we will have more time
yes,
to
sir.
also
share
with you our insight here between us.
Anybody else seeing, sir. Looks like somebody has gone.
We have around like 100 years of experience to share with you about industry insights and know-how and tips, what we gather.
Yeah. Ravi Teja, am I audible?
Together, like over the 120 experts worldwide have this opportunity.
Teja, it is the next YouTube video which is getting played.
Yeah,
you
next
show off your
YouTube. Share our.
Yeah.
So is it clear now?
Yes, it's clear. Continue, Dr. Ravi Teja.
Yes, it's clear. Please continue.
Please continue.
All right. Yeah. So this was a real life patient. I don't want to sort of because all of you who are clinicians who have had this experience of patients who come and say, "Now I am okay. Can I discontinue the medication?" Is a very, very common clinical situation. And to explain to people why we cannot eliminate the disease from their body, but that they need to continue to take treatment in order to keep the illness under control. It can be, I found it very, very challenging. But by using a day-to-day example of which they are familiar with, where the same concept is embedded. So control is possible, good control is possible, cure is not possible. To communicate that by relating it to an example that they already know is actually, I found, to be quite an effective way to explain to lots of people. And the most important thing which I want to emphasize is, I don't know if you noticed how long that video was. It was under 5 minutes, probably under 4 minutes. Is that right, Ravi?
Yes.
Just, yeah. So in 5 minutes, you can actually do this kind of communication. It will, of course, need to be followed up. But I think from the video, it's evident that they are able to comprehend this and hopefully remember this and take it away with them. Because this session is just 15 minutes long, there are so many ways in which this method can be used. I have chosen to demonstrate this particular one. And how much time do we have, Ravi, for questions? How much is my allotted time? Another 5 minutes.
Ma'am, could we come back for questions at the end of the session?
Oh, of course. Okay, then, yeah. Just, do I have a few minutes more of my time, or have I run out? Okay, I'll just take 2 minutes to say that this is one thing I learned from my teachers when I was a student, which I realized much later, something that looks very, very effective, and this thing, you must also be careful that you don't run into trouble with it. It is important that this is done in a question answer format. So if you look at it, I could just say, this is just like wearing glasses for myopia. If you wear it, your vision will be clear. If you don't wear it, your vision won't be clear. I have myopia, you have something in your nerves, the thing is the same. It does not have the same impact. So doing it in a question answer format is far more effective than just directly linking the two concepts. The second thing is, as in anything in life, a lot of it is dependent on the rapport that is there between the patient and family and yourself. So for them to feel understood, sometimes you could see in that video, the person was not getting it. And I was shifting from the person to the relative. So this is how real life it is. It doesn't always work, but you can always work around it. So I'll stop now, and I'm happy to field questions at the end of the whole thing. Ravi and I have, there are two papers. He'll share the links with you about what I have explained in a little bit more detail, and there are some other examples which we commonly used. It is my experience that experienced clinicians already use this technique quite a lot, and I'm sure many of you are already doing it. If you pay attention to it and refine it, you can make it even more effective. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the talk, ma'am. I would like to confirm, is my screen visible again? Shows the links for different articles for analysis in psychiatry.
Yes, Ravi.
Moving on to our next speaker, Dr. Aarti Ganesh. Dr. Aarti has done her MBBS from MS Ramaiah Medical College, Bangalore, DPM from IMH Hyderabad, and DNB from SCARF, Chennai. She has over 9 years of experience of teaching psychiatry. Her areas of interest include bipolar disorders, psychosocial rehabilitation. When I asked her students what they would like to tell about Dr. Aarti, they said she's completely down to earth and emphasizes on strong foundations of learning psychiatry and is a very pragmatic teacher. And staying true to these words, today's talk will be delivered by her on innovative teaching methods in psychiatry, including use of social media. Over to you, ma'am.
Shall I share my presentation, Dr. Ravi Teja?
Ma'am, if you're comfortable, I will continue sharing this.
Yeah, you can do it, doctor. You can do it, no problem.
Sure, ma'am. Let me know when you would like.
Yeah, you can start. You can start. Good morning to one and all. I thank Dr. Vikas Menon and Dr. Ravi Teja for giving this wonderful opportunity to be able to deal with all the eminent teachers of psychiatry. I feel like a drop in the ocean amidst the whole crowd over here today. I would just like to share my experience over the past 9 years that I've been dealing with the DNB students who are doing their residency program in SCARF. As teachers, I think we also need to know what we are looking at. Are we looking at making good residents? Are we looking at ensuring that we have a good knowledge transfer to the students? Or are we aiming at making good practitioners? At the end of the day, when we sit back and think, I think our whole process of teaching students psychiatry is to make them good practitioners to the whole world and to bring about a good change in all patients who experience mental disorders. So, sir, can you go on to the next slide? Yeah. Last week, we had a talk in the Manthan program where we had a senior psychiatrist speaking about the effect of social media and psychiatry. So I would just like to share a few points and compare that with this. So when we are teaching psychiatry to students, psychiatry is a very difficult specialty to get trained and also to train, right? So what matters most? Is it what we are teaching or the way in which we are delivering the content? Personally, I feel both matters a lot. What we are teaching matters immensely, and the way in which the content is being delivered also plays an equal role. So coming from the old school, traditional methods, old is always gold. Case conferences, I think, form the basis of psychiatry. Grand rounds are something in which I think each and every student learns a lot. Lectures, seminars, journal clubs, and clinics. I think this has been the foundation for every resident who undergoes a rotation in psychiatry. So these have been the traditional methods, and hands-on training is extremely important. And at the end of it, I think theory exams are conducted basically to evaluate what has been learned. But then now going on, I mean, like considering the last 1.5 years, what has happened, the pandemic situation and all, teaching has not stopped at all. So can you please move on to the next slide? Yeah. So what is the new thing which is in? What are the new teaching methods? Basically, there is active learning. Active learning, everywhere it happens where we expect the students to actively pitch in for their learning. The students are basically involved actively in the learning process. There is this new concept called flipped classroom, right? Flipped classroom is that the traditional classroom where the teacher delivers a lecture. It's a lecture which happens where a topic is chosen, the teacher delivers a lecture, and then a homework assignment is given. But what happens in the flipped classroom technique is basically the whole thing is flipped. The student are given the topic, they are at home, they are expected to look on to the lecture, read and come. And then in the classroom activity, that is when they are met during the rounds or whenever the training happens, there's an active collaboration and discussion among the students with the person who is training them. So basically, this is the new thing in which is the flipped classroom activity which happens. Apart from that, there are other innovative techniques through which training can be developed. That is, there is collaborative method which has been happening all along, and also which is going on where there is an active collaboration which is expected between the residents and also the teachers. And then now the new in thing considering the pandemic is the social media. So all of us know that the Zoom has created a big boom, right? I mean, like we are able to reach every nook and corner, and everything, nothing stops, right? Teaching, training, consultation, everything goes on over Zoom. But then we also have to keep in mind, like what knowledge is being imparted, what lectures are being delivered, how much is it reaching the residents, right? So one thing which we have thought about was like, while delivering the lectures, we can actively make the residents being involved in whatever topic. And in most of the scenarios, I think the sessions are recorded. For the benefit of the students, probably the recorded sessions could be sent across to the students in case they wanted to revise the topic which has been discussed. This was one thing which we had talked about. And active use of social media. I mean, like we have a lot of WhatsApp groups, you have lectures on YouTube. I think we can encourage students to look into topics, to enroll into courses, have scientific content, right? So the next slide, sir, please. And one important thing which I think I would like to share here is learners as educators. This has been happening for a very long time, right? Senior residents training the junior residents. Correct. The third year PG trains the second year and the first year PG. So I think if we can actively promote this, it will help in better learning. I will not say this is an innovative learning, but it is something which can be laid emphasis upon. And what now is currently in vogue is the OSCE setup. See, from the traditional methods, I agree that we need to understand regarding the case, we need to formulate have a formulation, have a diagnosis, go on to the management and all. But I think we also need to give emphasis to this OSCE thing which is happening currently. Considering the DNB program which has been happening in the organization where I work in, I think there was one occasion in which students were assessed and the exam was conducted on this OSCE basis. So OSCE is nothing but objective structured clinical examination. There are stations, multiple stations where the clinical assessment is done. The students are directly observed, the performance of the students, how they go about. So they are given specific scenarios and they are asked to assess certain things, and a direct observation of the performance basically happens. So this is another method in which we can start training the students. I mean, like we can break up the case into small bits, and we can ask them to get trained in the OSCE of one specific bit. The other thing is conducting workshops. This is also one way. Small groups. I mean, if you're having a group of around 10 to 12, probably you can have one topic. And I understand considering the current scenarios, we cannot have a workshop, but virtually we can have a lot of other things. And I think right now there's a lot of psychiatry training going on. I think almost every week there is something or the other which keeps happening in psychiatry. New topics are being taught. Would just like to emphasize that students have to get a little more active. I think they learn a lot by looking at, I mean, like by enrolling into workshops and also attending such Zoom sessions. So ultimately, we should also, as trainers, we should also know like where we stand, right? I mean, have we delivered what we are expected to deliver? So has the knowledge transfer actually happened? So this will basically only happen with a periodic evaluation of the students, right? So the students have to be periodically evaluated for their performance, and we also need to give the students a feedback, and probably it should be the other way around also. We could also get a feedback from them regarding what else they expect, what else not improvisation, probably what other ways in which we could help deliver them better knowledge. So these are certain things which I would like to lay emphasis upon. So continuing with the traditional methods, I think we can bring in the new methods, the e-learning, where basically everything is computer aided, where proper use of prudent use, I would say prudent use of social media for training will help students a lot. So we do continue with the traditional methods of case conferences. We do have periodic assessments, and I think we should also be going into, we should also upgrade ourselves, right? I mean, like we have to encourage students to go through this e-media, prudent use of social media for better knowledge gain. So these are the things which I thought, which we also tell our students. And I mean, like, these are the things which have been found to be useful. So I hope that whatever I have spoken will be helpful for the others also. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, this is a varied combination. We had Professor Deepa from CMC Vellore, Dr. Aarti from a center that trains DNB candidates, SCARF. Now, after hearing teachers, now know what students think that teachers have to impress upon for teaching in psychiatry. For this purpose, we have Dr. Usha Nandini.
Good morning, sir. Am I audible?
Yes. Let me introduce Dr. Usha Nandini before she begins. She did her MBBS from Mata Medical College, University of Tamil Nadu, MGR Medical. She's currently a second-year postgraduate in MD Psychiatry, Tiruvannelli Medical College, Tamil Nadu. She describes herself as a very studious girl with several medals in MBBS, a passion for psychiatry and literary interests with contributions to Lexicon Medical Magazine, India Medical Times, and HealthMed. She calls herself as a teacher's pet and hopes to live up to their expectations someday. Over to you, Dr. Usha.
Thank you, sir. Good morning to one and all present here. I'm an MD psychiatry student, and I'm here to talk on the student's perspective, like how as a UG or as a PG student, we learn from our teachers and what sometimes influences us in ways that the teacher might not even know. So before that, I'd like to thank the organizers for providing me an opportunity to talk on such an elite forum. So can you please go to the next slide? The next slide, sir. So as an MBBS student or as an MBBS graduate, what are certain things that teachers do that impresses students, creates a fascination for psychiatry, and sometimes even pulls them into psychiatry? Psychiatry itself has certain inherent qualities, attractive ones that like fancy terms and intriguing diagnosis. As an MBBS attending clinical postings, will be commonly exposed to things like vital signs, how to take a history, how to do a clinical examination, etc. But when it comes to psychiatry postings, everything sounds alien. They talk about things like illusion, delusion, hallucinations, intelligence, emotional intelligence, IQ, etc. And we sit with eager puppy eyes listening to our teachers, very intrigued by them. And I was introduced to to something called emotional intelligence, and that actually got me hooked. So teachers are the ones who actually introduce us and interest in psychiatry in these. And sometimes showing the magic of the drugs, there is a lot of misconceptions about psychiatry even among doctors, right? So MBBS students are not any different, and breaking them by showing the biological model that instills inspiration and wonder. I still remember my assistant professor showing me a case of severe depression when I was a second or third year clinical student, and we saw how distressed the patient was, and it was at the verge of suicide, and she was prescribed a small dose of an SSRI. And on the next visit, we saw the wonder of the drug. We literally saw the patient improving. The same was shown by another professor who showed me the magic of antipsychotics like olanzapine, and I was actually speechless. Such real life demonstrations of the treatment efficacy and improvement in the quality of life shown by our teachers actually makes a hard impression on the student. This happens in lectures sometimes, but commonly in case demonstrations and clinical case discussions, one-on-one teachings, etc. This happens a lot. And sometimes talking about the practical aspects of a career in psychiatry by some of our teachers in a very non-formal small group discussions, like over a coffee or just sitting and chatting with teachers. We talk about various career options, earning potentials psychiatry has, research options in psychiatry, etc. Opens our eyes wide towards psychiatry. No matter how many books or articles does this, when it comes from our teachers, it has a great impact. Coming to the next slide, sir. Next slide, sir. As after entering psychiatry as a postgraduate, there are enormous teaching learning experiences that happens from our teachers, like simple things like interviewing and therapeutic techniques. We might read a lot about these in our books, but nothing substitutes sitting with an assistant professor or a professor and observing them. As residents, we are generally allotted cases and given ample amount of time to take history, but when we bring the patient to our professor and assistant professor, within minutes we find them identify the problem areas. Then they actually teach us how to observe, how to listen, how to navigate through a patient's story. They both actively and passively tell us where to employ what kind of techniques, what a normal emotion is, what an abnormal emotion is, how to differentiate among them, how to incorporate what we learn with respect to the socio-cultural aspects of the landscape, etc., is what is taught to us by the teachers. They also discuss and show us how to deal with various scenarios, like what can be done in a small OPD setting. What if it is a rehab center? What if it is a research institute? What if we have to deal with a crowded camp with 100 patients at a time? How to differentiate between certifying a mental retardation or a chronic mental illness within minutes, and how to decide with whom, with what kind of patient to spend more time on, like how to navigate the inadequate resources in some of our settings. Like in some settings we have very poor resources. What happens when a drug of choice is not available? What happens when a treatment is not available? How to deal with the administration and get the resources that we require for our department? That is also actually demonstrated by our teachers, both actively and passively. And they also teach us how to build networks and work as a team. Instead of arguing over which clinical purview this stands, they teach us how to liaise with the residents of other specialties like medicine, surgery, neurology. They teach us to liaise with psychologists, social workers, and how to improve the overall care and treatment of the patient as a whole. They also steer us towards various journals, books, like how it was discussed in the previous talks. They steer us towards sources like YouTube, social media, etc., for both academic and non-academic purposes, and that actually helps us improve a lot. They also teach us how to handle oneself, Like studying psychiatry does not make us immune to the problems, right? In fact, there is a higher proportion of suicide risk among psychiatrists according to statistics. So teachers show us how to handle ourselves in a non-academic informal discussions with teachers helps through like how to handle us. And they also teach us ideal versus practical. They help us to extract a kind of wisdom from all the knowledge that we acquire. Like they help us to know what is ideal, but also equip us to be wise and practical. Teachers sometimes make us feel at ease and make themselves accessible to us, right? We are not in school anymore to be scared of teachers. If I'm scared of talking to my teacher or making mistakes in front of my teacher, then I will not learn. And they make the teachers, when they make a comfortable space for us to clarify things that might sound silly or even menial but are very confusing to a student, that actually helps for the teaching learning experience. Subtle, like how anxiety is in one point is related to psychosis, at one point related to depression, at one point related to anxiety spectrum disorders. This might all sound silly and very simple things, but it needs to be clarified. And this is possible when teachers make themselves accessible, like in one-on-one interactions, small group discussions, etc. And COVID times, online teachings require a special mention, like how Ekalaiva learned without even meeting the Guru Dronacharya. We are able to learn from the giants in the field of psychiatry, from various institutes, from different states and even different countries, and all kinds of teaching methodologies like seminars, workshops, clinical discussions, debates, and whatnot. All these have happened due to COVID, which actually uncovered online platforms as a powerful teaching tool. And next slide, please, sir. I'd like to conclude by emphasizing on this point. Having an open line of communication between a teacher and a student helps to have a better teaching learning experience. The student should be obviously receptive to be molded by the teacher, but the teacher should also be open to doubts, clarifications, and sometimes suggestions for the betterment of the learning experience. Even in this forum, I think Aarti ma'am addressed this, like giving a voice for a student and allowing me as a student to talk in this forum of teachers actually is an important thing. I think this is one of the powerful tools that is even emphasized by modern CPAB based curriculums, etc. So thank you all for the time and patience, and I'd like to specifically thank my teachers and seniors for amazing teaching learning experiences that I've been provided with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Usha, for that. I joined the many others thinking on the forum today into seeing that you would definitely be an excellent psychiatry teacher, and you're a teacher in the making. And you also force a lot of faculty members to put their thinking hats on, because you have just widened the scope of expectations that the new generation students are looking into development in terms of networking, communication, professional skills development, many things that we hope the teaching methods evolve to accommodate. Dr. Jagadish in the chat. Thank you, Usha. Dr. Jagadish has put up a very beautiful summary in the chat of summarizing all the speakers and making my work much simpler. So in summarizing, we have how analogies can be a very useful clinical as well as a teaching tool. We have Dr. Aarti, who mentioned about why content matters and how these matters. She also emphasized on the various new methods and also emphasized on hands-on training. And Usha has asked us to think on the various lines that are largely ignored in conventional training of postgraduates today. We have time for the audience to pose questions to our speakers. You may either type it in the chat box or unmute yourself and speak. Thank you.
Madam, I have a question to Dr. Aarti Ganesh. Madam, DNB teaching is not easy, and there are a lot of challenges in engaging the students in DNB course. And I was curious how you handled during the COVID pandemic. What method did you try? Did you try any of these methods which you spoke just now? I'm just curious of what you have tried. Thank you so much.
Aarti madam, you have to unmute. Please unmute. Aarti madam, please unmute.
Thank you, sir. We have been actually, I agree with you that DNB is a very tough residency program. Say like it's almost equivalent or tougher than MD. We have been using active use of social media has been happening for training of our DNB students. So we have been using the Skype. Even prior to that, we were having, and we do have Zoom sessions with them. So apart from that, as we are working on rotation basis, we also have hands-on training which happens on the day. I mean, like they work every day, we work by rotation. So whenever the cases are presented, I mean, like we just emphasize on hands-on training on specific important issues to be learned for any specific case. But then, as I told, we have been having Zoom sessions with our students, and also Skype sessions are happening.
Thank you, madam.
Dr. Manik, please proceed, sir.
Good afternoon, all esteemed teachers. I'm Professor Dr. Manik Bhise from MGM Aurangabad. I would rather than question, I would like to share my recent experience with PG teaching. Here, since last few months, we have tried PBL, that is problem-based learning, for our postgraduate students. And we do that in the typical prescribed methods. Our experience had been that students liked it much more than the cases also. They were like, sir, please keep one PBL at least a week so that we will learn from our own discussions, and also will have the ready notes, because the scribe will be there who will be writing the PBL, what had happened and how it all proceeded. So that was something that also amazed us as a teachers, how adult learners actually like the participatory learning than the traditional, maybe where the one person is presenting, others are evaluating him, or maybe sometimes, whether we want or not, the audience becomes some judgmental, even in case conferences, seminars, or our this journal clubs also. So that's the experience I would like to share.
Thank you so much for sharing, sir.
Welcome.
The forum is still open for any final questions.
I have another question for the postgraduate. I'm curious to know how many teachers have taken her feedback, and what kind of feedback have they taken from her?
Sir, it's not an active like formal feedback session, but almost all teachers are have been open to suggestions, and that is why I'm here. I think like to be able to talk about these points that have helped in teaching learning experiences.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Usha, Dr. Vinay, sir has another question to you. He wants to know your thoughts on making handling oneself a formal content in PG curriculum. Sir, would you like to go ahead, Usha?
Sir, I think that is very important, not just as a psychiatry postgraduate, but like in even a general MBBS curriculum, because and it is especially important for a psychiatry postgraduate because like once we've joined psychiatry, what we practically see is that everybody looks us as somebody whom we can look up to and whom we can ask for life decisions and things like that. But in reality, as postgraduates, even we are not able to handle ourselves in certain aspects. So I think it will be uh, very useful if there is a part of curriculum involving that, sir.
Thank you, Usha. Dr.
Thank you, sir.
If you have a follow-up question for that, please let us know. Dr. Jagadish, sir, please go ahead.
I would like to share my experience on on handling oneself. Basically, at our institute, we feel that this is a very important aspect of the PG's training, and resilience is something which is not a skill that the residents come along with when they join their residency. And so we see this as a competency actually, and we are using a framework developed by the ABIM, and we see all these skills as part of a competency. So a novice would in this region would probably not be adept to handle time pressures or novel situations, while they may be able to do simple things. Okay, as one goes from a novice to an expert, the competency develops, and the competency of handling oneself, especially in novel situations, under time pressures, under Maslow's conflicts. Maslow's conflicts means that one has not had food, one has not had water. All these are the things, and we try to incorporate this into some of our PG initial induction training. So that is, yeah, it is a need. Yeah, and we have been working on it. Yes.
Thank you for sharing, sir. Dr. Vasant Meghna asked this question: do you teach patient safety specifically to your residents? Ma'am, would you like to direct this question to any of the speakers, or any of the speakers would like to answer this question?
To Dr. Aarti as well as to Dr. Ramaswamy, I just wanted to know whether there is any specific training that residents have on patient safety, error management, documentation, and electronic medical records.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, I think definitely the residents are given a briefing. Definitely, they are also, it happens consistently also regarding what has to be done in managing patients, importance of documentation. And now I think electronic media is something where all our documents are there. So residents are given training in that, and they are quite well aware, and they do follow everything.
Is it done in any specific modular manner, madam? As in, we are going to talk about psychiatry.
If this is patient safety, if this is regarding management of a violent patient and documentation, I mean, like it is all. I mean, it happens theoretically also, and also hands-on training happens. And there is, see, the electronic EMR record maintaining depends on the software the organization whatever is there in your specific clinic or the place where you work, the training happens from there. But apart from that, I think everyone these days, everyone is quite aware that documentation is very, very important. So the residents are also given a briefing regarding management and also the importance of documentation, and they do follow it in a very sincere manner.
Okay. I was wondering if there was any formal teaching at the beginning of residency, because we all learned this passively through hands-on training. So I'm looking at people who are engaging in formal initial few days of training specifically on patient safety, clinical error management, etc. in psychiatry.
At least in the place where I work, it is also hands-on training only.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, madam.
Where I underwent training also, it was hands-on training only. I think that is the best way I think people learn. I think we do have modules and all that, which is there in many of the guidelines. But then hands-on training is something in which the students is also able to relate and pick it up in a better way.
Yes, yes. Thank you, madam.
Thank you so much. We close the forum for questions. When Professor Mohan Isaac, we posed this innocent question and asked whether anybody would actually be attending a meeting on a Sunday morning. And then he showed such positivity and said, you never know. And then when you have more than 70 participants for the session, I'm very quite overwhelmed and happy to say, sir, you're right. And to be among such celebrated teachers is definitely a privilege. I specifically thank the iTalk team and Dr. Kishore, Dr. Vinay, Dr. Kiran, and all the others who have encouraged and asked me to moderate this session. It has been a great learning experience, and I thank the supporting organizations for this, and I wish you all a very happy Sunday. With this, we would like to close the session.
Thank you.
Dr. Vikas, sir, is there anything else that you would like to?
No, it's been a very informative, enriching interaction, Dr. Ravi, and wonderfully moderated, wonderfully all inputs and the discussions in the chat window. I think we've got a great beginning to, we've got a great beginning to the program. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm ending.